Oh, okay, cool. We're back. I'm gonna wait. Okay, cool. Thanks for hopping on. Sorry about that. Yeah, I tried to switch to the document cam and it was a bad time. Okay, great. Glad you're here. So good to see you guys. Sorry for the disruption, but glad we're back. And the chat thing is open for this one. So if you have thoughts, I'm going to prioritize the questions that people sent me beforehand. But all y'all are the cutest. Okay, awesome. Glad you're here. This is so great. And thanks, Sid, for the heads up that the feed had broken. I couldn't tell what was going on from my end. Okay, awesome. Glad y'all are here. So did you guys see the stuff about the bread and the deadweight loss? Are we cool with that, or did that cut out? I'm seeing conflicting responses. Y'all are the best. This is so great. All right. Cool. Okay, so draw me a price ceiling graph on your paper. All right, draw graphs. Come on, guys. I know you're not drawing if you're typing. Okay, cool. So draw me a price ceiling graph. Okay, price ceiling, yeah. All right, so remember you start with your supply and demand curve, just chilling, right? There are no shifters on this, unless I specifically tell you, but I wouldn't because that's crazy. But in AP, you'll probably encounter price ceilings and shifts, which is the best ever. But oh yeah, archetype drawn. Thanks, archetype. I appreciate it. Getting it done. All right, so price and quantity. Right, and you title it. So if we're looking at a price control for bread, bread, right? So price ceiling on bread. So you're drawing your supply and demand curves, title, P and Q, the usual, right? Okay, but we know there's a price control in this market. Okay, a price ceiling. Okay, so law says, oh, you want to sell your bread for, okay, so let's say the equilibrium price would be $3 maybe. Okay, so $3 for a loaf of bread. Boop, boop, boop. But law says, nope, you can't do that. You have to sell your bread for $2 or less. Okay, so your equilibrium price would be $3. We're like, no, got to be $2 or less. So if something in the story about the price control tells you that the price is being held below the equilibrium price or the mandated price is less than the equilibrium price, then you know it's going to be a price ceiling. Okay, so go ahead and draw your price ceiling. We got it? Cool. All right, so your price ceiling has to be below the equilibrium price to make a difference in this market. Okay, so if the price is, it's illegal for the price to be more than $2, then that's going to pull this price out of equilibrium. So remember, floors up high, ceiling down low. Okay, so to make a difference, your price ceiling, the maximum price has to be below equilibrium. Okay, so go ahead and take a second and do your quantity demanded and quantity supplied. Okay, so where this price creates quantity supplied. Oh yeah, it has to be below the equilibrium price because you could have a law that says it's illegal to sell bread for more than $5. But if the equilibrium price is $3, is anyone selling bread at $5? No one, right? They're selling it at $3, right? So you could make it illegal to sell it above $5, but people are going to be like, okay, that doesn't make any difference. I was going to sell it less than $5 anyway because that's the price, right? So the ceiling has to be below equilibrium to make a difference in the market. Okay, and why it's called a price ceiling? Because as you, so it holds the price down. It's a maximum price. Does that make sense? So ceilings keep things from rising. Okay, whereas a floor is a minimum price and it prevents the price from going down to equilibrium. Okay, so that's why your ceiling, it's called a ceiling, but it's we could call it like something, I don't know, we can give it a different name, like a maximum price, right? But that's boring, right? Nobody's about that life. Okay, so I can see the chat. I got you. I got you. Okay, and then okay, so we have quantity supplied and quantity demanded. So where the price hits the supply curve, so we go to the supply curve and say, okay, at $2, how many sellers are willing to sell this? Supply curve's like, oh, yikes, bud. Nobody really wants to sell it at that low price, right? So law of supply says at low prices, your sellers are out. They're like, yeah, we're not going to hustle. That's not a lot of money. Okay. And then we take our price to the demand curve to get quantity demanded, QB. Okay. And at quantity demanded, the price is low, and so the quantity demanded is going to be really high. Okay. And that makes sense. So you just think about it intuitively, and we good? Okay. Okay. Cool. So then the equilibrium quantity, QE, okay, would be the quantity that happens in this market if the price were $3, but it's not because the law says that's illegal. Okay, so this smaller quantity, so where your price floor or price ceiling hits the first line, you get your quantity supplied here or quantity demanded for a price floor, and this is the quantity of trades that happen. Okay, so all these folks want to buy a loaf of bread, but it's sold out, it's gone. Okay, and so we can indicate that with a shortage, and we should as we draw this graph, shortage. Okay. Right, so we indicate that with shortage, bracket between the two. Okay, but these people are the people we're really concerned about, okay? Because they, these buyers would have been willing to pay the full market price, but you guys are fine, calm down, it's okay. These folks would have loved to buy the bread at $3, and these sellers would have been happy to sell bread at $3, but at $2, they're like, yeah, now I'm staying home, right? I'm not going to run a bakery for this money. It's not worth it, right? And so all these buyers who would love to buy that get nothing, okay? So that's deadweight loss, okay? So we look at these sellers and we're like, oh yeah, all these peeps would get this producer and consumer surplus if these trades were happening too, but they're not, okay? So that's the disappointment reflected here on the graph of these people who, the bread sold out, they get none. Okay? And so sure, the price is low, but the availability isn't greater because they're going to sell out, right? So basically, the reason we talk about price controls is because if you ask people like, or if you say, oh wow, housing's so expensive, or wow, food's so expensive, or wow, electricity's so expensive, we want poor people to be able to afford nice things. This isn't cool, right? The first thing people will think to do will be like, oh well, let's just pass a law that says the price has to be lower. Obviously, that'll solve the problem. It's great, right? But it doesn't solve the problem, right? You can't just change reality with laws. There's some problem. And so really the only way to get the price of something truly lower is for the supply to increase, okay? And so oftentimes there are laws that prevent the supply from increasing, like with building new houses, there's so many rules about how you have to build new houses and where you can build them that it's very difficult to build new housing in a lot of places. So supply is restricted, so price is super high. But then people suggest like, oh, just use a price control, but that doesn't fix the problem. Okay, cool. Yeah, all right. So producer and consumer surplus also seem to be rough. Yeah, so remember on the supply curve, it tells you about your producer's willingness to sell. And so if they can sell for a higher price than they're willing to sell it for, then they're stoked about that, right? So if we could sell at the equilibrium price, all this would be producer surplus. Okay? But right now, only this is producer surplus. Okay, is that the $2? Only these sellers are able to sell for a higher price than they're willing to. Okay, and then actually all this is consumer surplus. So the buyers who do get there early get cheap bread, and they're super stoked about that. Okay, cool. So there's that. All right, so it looks like popular. Mark Markabawi. I just spent the first 25 minutes on price floors and ceilings, so I'm sorry, bud. All right, but it looks like very popular request for economies of scale, which is my favorite ever. So glad to do that. Examples on deadweight loss. I don't know. Examples on deadweight loss. Okay, so anytime, oh, I guess maybe clarify what do you mean by examples of deadweight loss, Chloe? I'm a little confused. Okay, all right, but yes, economies of scale. I got you, Maria. I got you. Okay. All right. Okay, so economies of scale, yes, best ever, right? Okay, so for economies of scale, we talk about a firm, right, a company, and how as that company grows over the long run, as they expand, as they open new factories, as they open new stores, it's we're going to be thinking about how their cost of producing each thing that they produce changes as they make more, okay, as they expand, okay. So the short run ATC always looks like your little bowl shape, right? Low bowl ATC, okay, right? Your low bowl, right? You're initially able to spread your average fixed costs and get the average total cost down, but then you get some rad diminishing marginal returns as you're trying to pack more and more variable inputs into this one little lonely factory that you have. So economies of scale only happens when you open new companies. Well, it happens as a company scales, which is gets bigger. So you could have your one tiny factory forever, right? You never have to open a second factory. But if you're like, oh wow, running this one factory is going really great, and I bet I could get some benefits from having two factories, then you think about if it makes sense to maybe try to open more. So of course, right, again, some people never scale their company, and some businesses are really terrible for scaling. So like a fancy restaurant, right? So if the fancy restaurant is dependent on that chef's impressive skills, then you're not going to be able to scale that, right? Because you can't like open one of those on every corner if it depends on the special skills of this special person, right? So some businesses will never scale, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with having a business at small scale, but it does mean the average total costs are higher, okay? So, right, so that's why like sort of luxury or boutique businesses maybe just have one location. They're pretty expensive because their costs are higher. Whereas if you think about like, if you think about a company that expands and has stores everywhere and can get its costs super low, like Walmart and Target, or McDonald's, right? They can get a really good deal on their resources, and they know how to open shops, and they have a formula, right? And so they're able to really keep their costs down and sell a much more affordable product. Okay? But again, like there's no better or worse sorts of companies doing that sort of thing. Every company's just trying to do its best. Okay? But expanding can have huge benefits. So that's economies of scale. Okay, so you have your one factory. You're like, this is cool. All right. But I bet I could get some benefits by having more factories. Okay. So you're like, all right, I'm gonna open a new factory. So we had some requests for tangible examples. So in each of your classes, we had one of you open a business and talked about what things would look like as you expand the business. But we could have, then I guess I should have thought of an example before, but like, I don't know, a sandwich shop, sure. Oh, you think I can't type comments and do videos at the same time? Wow. Okay. Just kidding. It's not me, but all right. So, sandwich shop, right? Very clever name. I know. Sorry. Whatever. So let's say that the average total cost, the cost of producing each sandwich at the sandwich shop, when they have just one location, is $5. Okay. It takes them $5 to make a sandwich. Okay. Because they only have one location, they maybe go to the grocery store to buy their materials because they don't go through a lot of sandwich makings. Okay, so it's the cost might be pretty high, right? Maybe there's a local restaurant supply where they can get some of the materials, but they can't get a great deal on the resources because they're just one little shop and they don't use a lot of resources. They don't go through a lot, so they can't get a great discount. Okay, so that's one sandwich shop. But they're like, you know what? If we had more sandwich shops, then we could go to a distributor of cheeses and meats and breads, and we could say, hey, we'll buy all of your breads, and that'll save you so much trouble of having to deal with all these other customers. Just sell us all your bread, give us a good deal on it, and that'll be a lot less hassle for you because you have to deal with less people. So the store's like, all right, cool, we'll open another shop, that'll be great. Okay, so then we draw a new ATC curve. We'll call this ATC 2. So the company's now expanded. They have a second sandwich. Okay? And now that they have a second sandwich shop, right, they can negotiate those better deals by buying resources in bulk, right? So they go to the suppliers and can cut a better deal. Okay, let's say now they can make a sandwich for $4 because they get a better deal on their materials. But remember, also another huge advantage to expanding is that maybe they decide to buy a giant piece of capital that now they can use more effectively. So for a sandwich shop, they might buy like a meat and cheese slicing machine that's really fast, and it's pretty expensive. So it wouldn't make sense for them to do that if they only had one sandwich shop. And so they wouldn't buy this giant piece of capital, even though it would save maybe so much time because it's so fast at slicing cheese and meat, right? But now that they have 2 stores, right, and they can share the cost of this cheese and meat slicer, right? Then they could have, all the slicing happen at one store and then have somebody run all the slices over to the other store, and they can make great use of this piece of capital. What if the cost outweigh the profit? Yeah, good. So they might not do that. However, because companies sell the sandwiches based on like at a price that is every sandwich they sell makes them $7 or whatever, right? So we'll say $7. It's really appealing for them to get their average total cost down, right? Because if they can sell a sandwich for $7 and it costs them $5 to make it, it's $2 of profit, okay. But if they can get the cost of producing each sandwich down to $4, that's super appealing. Please read by the ATC shape like that. Initially high average fixed cost, but then as you produce more, you divide the fixed costs, and then diminishing marginal returns as you cram a lot of variable resources into your one factory. So the company really wants to get this average cost down because that means more profit. Okay. So let's say they expand again, right? And they open a 3rd store, and now they're able to get their average total cost. So that is the cost of making each sandwich they make down to $3. Okay. That's awesome, right? And if they're selling those $7 sandwiches, now they're able to get $4 profit. So very appealing. Yeah. So so that's great. So this is economies of scale. As the company's expanding in the long run, so quantity is increasing. So we have like Q1, Q2, Q3. But the important thing is that the quantity is going up, okay? And the average total cost is going down. That's economies of scale. So that happens because they're buying resources in bulk, because their suppliers are willing to cut them a better deal if they buy a bigger quantity, because it's less hassle for the distributors if they can just sell all or a lot of their stuff to the sandwich shop. Okay, and then they can spread fixed costs better by a giant machine and just crank out their product. Oh yeah, if they have really good managers, having one really good manager managing several stores, you're again spreading a fixed cost, right? Because if you have your manager managing 3 stores, you don't have to pay the person 3 times as much, right? You pay them like twice as much, and they're managing 3 stores, and now you've just saved a lot of money on management. So that could be an appealing strategy. Okay, so that's economies of scale. All right, so now let's say they expand again, right? Sandwich shop number 4. Okay, but now their economies of scale have run out. Okay, so they can expand again, so to ATC 4, but the cost per sandwich still stays at $3. Okay, so the average total cost of making a sandwich hasn't changed, right? Maybe they can't get a better deal from their distributors by buying more materials. There's not much benefit to expanding for a bigger piece of capital, right? They've run out of the economies of scale. We call this constant returns to scale. Okay, so if you calculate your ATC at the beginning and your ATC at the end, and it stays the same, that's constant returns to scale. Okay. All right, and then and then if they continue to expand, which would be a bad idea, but they could, right? Maybe they are like on a growth trajectory, and it takes them some time to realize that their costs are starting to rise, because it can really sneak up on a company, especially if they're really excited about growing. They're like, oh, we got to expand, we're going to take over the world, right? But then we open here at ATC 5, we see the cost starting to rise. ATC 6, the cost starting to rise even more. So this is our diseconomies of scale. And remember our stylized graph of this, which I always draw to help me sort of remember how this goes. Okay, is the bathtub graph, right? The bathtub goes down, flat, up, LRATC. Sorry, you can't really see that, but long run average total cost. So each of your short run ATCs does a little bowl thing of spreading fixed costs and then diminishing marginal returns. But in the long run, you have economies of scale, constant returns, and diseconomies of scale. And then diseconomies of scale happens because a company gets big and unmanageable at some point, right? So maybe at 4 and 5 sandwich shops, it's hard for the owner to keep track of what's going on. And so maybe the quality starts to decline, or the workers start slacking and they start wasting materials, right? And so the costs start to rise. Yeah, so a General Motors, which is a giant car company, really gigantic, like one of the biggest employers in the country. A couple of years ago, they realized that they were hiring 2 teams of engineers to solve the exact same problem, and so it was incredibly wasteful. But they just didn't realize what was going on because it was huge. So a bunch of short run ATCs make the long run ATC, yes. Because remember, at any moment you're in a short run, right? You are dealing with the consequences of your past choices by the things that are set by contract or that you can't change in the short run. Over the long run, you can see the trends in the average total cost. Okay, and we did connect the bottoms of these ATCs to draw our like general line. And there's really no particular reason why we have to do that, because as alluded to earlier, this tells us nothing about profit directly, right? And so it might be the case that for a particular company, it makes sense for them to produce like in the ATC one, like at this quantity, which is not the lowest cost they could produce within that first factory, but maybe that quantity makes more sense for them given the profits that they could make, okay, given the demand. So there's that. But we just sort of assumed that they're going to want to keep their cost per sandwich as low as possible, which is not necessarily a bad idea. So both economies of scale and diseconomies of scale in the long run, yes. So if it tells you about short run stuff, it's not economies of scale. It's probably diminishing marginal returns or increasing marginal returns. But yeah, this is only a long run concept. Though, of course, the way it plays out in your life can mean a lot of short run ways. Like if your parents are driving you to school and your neighbors also go to basis, and so your parents pick them up on the way because it's next to no extra effort, but now the like cost per kid moved is half as much because you're sharing the ride. Does that make sense? So the total cost, like the total time of the trip, is a little bit longer because you went to pick them up, but the cost per kid is half as much because you're spreading the fixed cost of the ride over more kids. So there's that. Best to be in economies of scale, constant returns, or diseconomies. Either economies or constant returns. Diseconomies is bad news bears. Never want to be there. Nope. Companies will only get there by accident. Like they don't realize that they've gotten too big to be unmanageable before things get ugly. Increasing marginal returns, you add more of a variable resource and it gives you more extra output. It's like the second worker in the ball game being more productive extra than the first worker. Is in constant returns where the costs are lowest? Yeah. So this is called the minimum efficient scale. You guys don't need to know that, but in case you're curious. And yeah, the company would, if they care about getting their costs as low as possible, which is a good thing to care about, would want to be there. Yeah, at least there, at least that big. So yeah, being in constant returns is a great idea. Okay, were there any other questions about economies of scale? I'm trying to see what's up. So what's going down is economies of scale. Yeah. So if average total cost decreases while quantity is increasing, that's economies of scale. If average total cost is increasing while quantity is increasing, that's diseconomies. However, you guys might have noticed on the front page of the questions packet, there was a question where the quantity went down. Okay, so that's where you break out your handy dandy little LRATC, and you're like, oh, okay, right. The thing is changing in some way of cost, right? And the quantity is changing the way that it is. Okay, and then look at what region it's in. Okay, so I'm gonna give you guys a practice question, right? Okay, so, right, I don't know, maybe I'll just do it on my whiteboard. Okay, so the ATC, yeah, so let's say a company's total cost is $2 million. Okay, so a company's total cost is $2 million, and they're producing I don't know, 1,000 units of whatever. I don't know what they're producing. Okay, so 2 million. Total cost is $2 million for 1,000 units. Okay, if they expand and open new factories, let's say now they're going to make 1,500 units. Okay, so 1,500 units, and their costs are, I'll just give you total costs. That's easier. But sometimes you'll be given the average cost, so we'll do one of those in a second. Let's have the new cost be $3 million. Okay, all right. So at this, like for ATC 1, right? We have a total cost of $2 million at 1,000 units. Okay, and the company expands, and then now they're making 1,500 units, and the total cost is $3 million. Okay, so take a second and calculate your average total cost, because that's what you need to know for economies of scale, and then we'll compare them. Okay, so you have either calculated your ATC, which is a very good thing to do, or you've noticed that you have a 50% increase in quantity and a 50% increase in cost. Okay, so your cost is increasing, average total cost is increasing at the same, is changing at the same, sorry, your total cost is changing at the same rate your quantity is changing. So anybody want to tell me, yeah, here we got it, Sanchel, constant returns to scale, bingo, all right? So awesome, good. So if we calculate the ATCs, right, we take total cost divided by quantity, because that's what we have total cost and quantity, okay? And then that would be ATC 1, and we take this total cost divided by this quantity, that would be ATC 2. They're going to be the same, because it's increasing by the same percentage. Okay? So that's constant returns to scale. Okay? All right, so I'll give you another one. All right, so in this one, the company could make, if they make 100 units, then it costs them, we'll do $6 of average total, no, sorry, average fixed cost, and $4 of average variable cost, okay? And if they shrink, let's say the company closes some stores and now they're making 80 units. I don't know my calculator on me, this might get ugly. Okay, and they and the total cost is 700. Yeah, oh, this will be all right. Okay, and the total cost is $700. Okay. All right. So initially, the company's making 100 units with an average fixed cost of $6 and average variable cost of $4. Okay. Then the company closes some stores. Now they're making 80 units and total cost of $700. All right. Anybody got it? Anybody got it for me? Yep, you got it, Abigail. Okay, average total cost. Really? No one? No one? All right. Okay, so you need average total cost, right? Okay, so average fixed cost plus average variable is average total, right? That is total is average plus fixed, or sorry, is variable plus fixed. Okay, so $10 of average total cost at 100 units. Okay, so $10 of ATC. No, you guys are not dumb. You're fine. Okay, But yeah, there are practice problems on this in the packet, so please do those. Okay, and then total cost. Somebody help me out. How do you find total cost? Or sorry, average total cost if you have total cost and quantity. Good. There we go. We got it. Good job, guys. Just economies of scale. Yeah. So you take total cost and you divide it by quantity to get the average total cost after the company has shrunk. So it's going to be what, 7 something. Okay. Anyhow, it's less than 10. I'm good at maths. Bingo. It's less than 10. All right. So it's like 8 something or 9. Yeah. So yep, average total cost has gone down as the company has shrunk. So you're like, oh, we don't know about that. We go to our handy dandy graph, okay, to help us remember what's what here with economies of scale, right? So we go to our bathtub. All right, so average total cost went down, okay, as quantity went down. And that happens here. Average total cost going down as quantity goes down. We got it? Oh, thanks. Thanks for doing the math for us. All right, cool. So that's that. Are we feeling better about how to calculate those? So you have to find ATC and how it's changing and whether the quantity is going up or down as your ATC is going up or down or staying the same. And then it's economies, diseconomies, and lots of returns. Okay, you got this, team. Don't sell yourself short. All right, so it looks like there's some stuff about externalities. Okay. Okay. Oh, sorry, Maria wanted to know why the quality would go down in a price control situation. So there's a price ceiling, keeping the price low. Your sellers are not going to be willing to hustle to make good products if they can't sell for what it's worth. So, right, if they have to sell it at a lower price than it would otherwise sell for, than the market price, they're going to say, why would we do a good job making the product? Okay, so the quality is going to decline. So the quality of the bread would go down in our earlier example. Or like if there's a price control on apartments or houses, which is really common, which is super problematic, because then why would you maintain your house, right? Because part of the reason people maybe like remodel their house or repaint it or fix things when they break is because they know it affects the resale value. So sure, it's nice to live in a place that's nice. But if you know that you can't sell the house for what it's worth, you wouldn't be willing to put a lot of effort into keeping it nice. Okay, so the quality would decline. Okay. Okay, so all right, and then we have what's the difference between private and common property rights? So private property rights are usually what we say when we, or what we mean when we say property rights, but it's the right to use the things you own in the way that you see fit. You can decide how to buy or sell or use a thing that you own. Okay. Obviously, in a lot of cases, there are restrictions on your property rights. So if you own land, the government might tell you how you can use that land, like what you can build on it. Yeah, but private property rights, as we've talked about, are super duper important for giving people an incentive to take care of what they own, establishing responsibility, right? So if something you own causes problems for other people, you're accountable, okay? Which is actually awesome because then people don't have a reason to be upset at that thing. So like if your dog goes and causes trouble for your neighbors, right? Then they can just call you and be like, hey, you have to come and get your dog, it's causing problems, right? Whereas if a wolf is causing problems, right? People can't just be like, oh, somebody come and pick up this wolf. Oftentimes they'll trap the wolf or even try to kill it. So the property right is really helpful for a lot of things. Okay, so spontaneous order. It looks like there's a lot of talk about that. Result of human action, but not human design. So markets, obviously, people pursuing their self-interest, they are doing what seems best to them, but in a market system, the way that you get ahead is by doing what other people value, right? So you get a lot of money by finding something that people want and giving it to them, right? So making something cool that makes people's lives better or creating value for other people. So that's a spontaneous order. Nobody's in charge of making sure, soy milk gets to the grocery store, but it's always there for you. It's always there for you because people are pursuing their self-interest to get there. So the idea of a spontaneous order is that it's spontaneous, no one's in charge of it, and no one directs the system, but it's orderly. You get amazing outcomes, like people, okay, like, oh yeah. So another example is like movement through a grocery store, right? So when you're in the grocery store, you route your pattern through the grocery store based on where people are, and you avoid like the more crowded areas, and you go to other areas first, and you go to the shortest line at the checkout, and nobody get to tell you which line to go to. They didn't assign you a line. You just went to the shortest line, right? And then another example is people driving on the road, right? So no one's in charge of telling you like, oh, this is when you're allowed to leave your house, and this is the route your car has to take, and this is when you can drop off at school. You just go and drive whenever you want, but it works out okay. Even though you would think like, oh my gosh, if everybody just goes on the road whenever they feel like it would be a disaster. But actually, it works out really well, and people respond to what other people are doing in the system. So like during certain times of the day, there's a lot of traffic. And so if people can, they try to adjust their schedules to avoid driving those times, or they go to routes that are less busy. Okay, so spontaneous order is where no one's in charge of a system, but the way that people respond to each other in that system creates a very orderly outcome that's actually way better than the outcome you get if someone were in charge of planning all of it. Okay? But basically, people who don't study or haven't studied economics don't realize how pervasive and amazing those systems are. And so they think that someone has to be in charge of a system for it to run well, when most of the systems in their life that run super well, no one's in charge of. No, you're amazing, OJ. You're a superstar. Okay, what are we doing here? Oh, free rider problem solutions? Yeah, solutions to the free rider problem. We talked about these. So we have our, right, so we're providing pure public goods in a market. Yeah, so like fireworks and radio stations and a club showing a movie on with a projector in the park, right? Anyone can enjoy those things, but we have to provide them. So we have to get the money for them in the first place, or Wikipedia, right? But donations are big. Advertising is big. That's how radio stations get money. That's how YouTube gets money. Yeah, so those are big. You can bundle the pure public as something people are willing to pay for. You can subsidize it with a paid version. And then, of course, you could do the government solution, which is where the government taxes people and then uses the money to pay for it. So like national defense. Okay. Okay, externalities. What do we know? What do we want to know about externalities? Okay, I need a specific question about externalities because I made the video for you guys. What's not clear? What do you want to work on? Okay. Oh, I pencil, yes, for sure. Okay, spontaneous order. Okay, what do we got? What do we got? Practice problems, random topics. Oh yeah, we will for sure do that. Okay, examples of fixed and variable costs. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so all right, how about? Oh yeah, so fixed costs. Someone mentioned in class, I think it was today or yesterday, the way that fixed costs and barriers to entry are super connected. So if you're struggling to figure out if something's a fixed or a variable cost, you can think about if it's a startup cost, right? If you were to start a business doing this thing, is it something you would have to buy before you start making any product, right? So you got to buy your big capital. You got to buy a building or rent one. You got to do your advertising, okay? So you got to do all that stuff before any production happens, okay? But then your variable inputs are things you need to produce it. Right, so you buy your building, that's fixed. You buy all the stuff to go in your building, that's fixed. You buy decorations for your building, that's fixed, right? But then if you're opening a store, right, then you buy inventory for your store, but you don't have to do that until like right before you open, and then you do that on an ongoing basis as you sell more of your product. Okay. So that's all variable. Variable inputs are, of course, your workers. You need more workers to make more product. Electricity, water, any materials, fabric or inputs, or yeah, anything you need more of to make more product. So remember, variable inputs, you need more to make more, and you can get more in the short run. Whereas your fixed inputs, either you don't need more to make more, like a permit, or you can't get more in the short run. Like a building, right? You might love having a second building, but it takes months to get all of that lined up, and you can't do that tomorrow. Okay. Effects of externalities. What? I totally have videos on that. But if effects of externalities, I mean, spillover benefits and spillover costs. But the reason that economists are concerned is the wrong amount of the action happens. So too much resources go to actions that have negative externalities, and too little resources go to actions that have positive externalities. So that's why they think it's not cool. How's electricity a variable cost? Okay, if you want to produce more product, you have to run your machines more. And so you use more electricity, right? Or if you leave your store, you have your store open for more hours, you need more electricity to do that. But if you don't want to produce anything and you just close the doors and you lock up, you still have to pay your fixed costs, right? You still have to pay your rent. But if you turn off the lights, you don't need to pay for any electricity. What are economies of scope? Oh yeah, economies of scope. Wow, I haven't thought about those in a long time. You don't need to know that. Economies of scope. Oh, yeah. So you don't need to know it, but if a company can get lower costs by spreading the scope of what they do. So like if you're making tires and one of your inputs is rubber, what you can do is you buy a rubber plant and then maybe get lower costs by getting your rubber directly from the rubber plant that you now own. But actually that's usually a bad strategy, because what companies will do is once they have that like feeder of input, they don't think about they don't think of the opportunity cost of it, basically, right? Whereas if they just bought materials from another company, they'd be like, oh, we don't like the rubber that's coming from this company, let's just switch to another company. But if they own that company, they're like, oh, we have to use our rubber. Oh, there's my doggo. This is Guinevere. So cute, right? Yeah, so so economies of scope, right, spreading into other industries to try to get your costs down, but kind of iffy strategy IRL. Okay. Oh, thanks. I think she's cute. All right. Cool. What else do we want to know? Fixed and variable costs do exist in the short run. Yepers. Fixed only exists in the short run, whereas variable exists in the short run and the long run. But yeah, in the short run, there are things you can change and there are things you can't. Things that do change with costs that change with quantity and cost that don't. Okay. Oh, hi, Arun. Cool. Awesome sauce. Good old times. Okay, so, Ashley had some questions. Let me see what those are. Okay. Oh yeah, quantity demanded versus quantity supplied. Okay, cool. Yep. Most missed question on the first test: quantity supplied versus quantity demand, quantity demanded or quantity supplied versus shifts, right? Okay, so remember, why does DMR make the ATC go up? Oh yeah, okay, thanks. I will get to that, Vincent. Let me write that down before I forget. Okay, DMR ATC. Yeah, okay, we'll do that. Okay. Yeah, so all right, so if the price of a good increases, that does not change demand or supply, whichever one you're looking at. So if you're given, this question probably would look like, there are 4 answer choices. 3 of them are shifters of supply or demand. And, excuse me, one of them is a change in the price of the product. It might be very sneakily worded, like instead of a price change, it says like the good became more expensive, right? But remember, that means the price is going up. Okay? So important that that we keep this in mind, because it's totally great to get hard questions wrong, but nobody likes to get easy questions wrong. That's so sad. But really, I just reviewed the last year's comp with the other teacher who helps write questions for the comp, because I help pick questions for the comp and pre-comp, or I do pick the questions for the comp and the pre-comp, and half of the students on the on the comp, friends, mixed up a demand versus quantity demanded question, right? It's so easy. So just be on the lookout for it. Know that it's going to be there. Promise, right? If the price is changing, just change as quantity demanded, okay? So people are like, oh, wow, the price is more expensive. I want to buy less of it, but not for any reason that's a shifter, right? There's no change in preference. There's no change in income. There's no change in price of a related good. There's no change in demographics or population. People aren't wanting to buy less. It's just it's more expensive, they buy less. Yeah, so that's quantity demanded. So be on the lookout. Change in price just moves you along the line. You need a shifter to have a shift. Hashtag no shifter, no shift. Cool. No, Abigail, no, you're so great. You're so great. Don't worry about it. No, Maria, you're going to be so great. You got it. You got it. All right. So the same for quantity supplied, absolutely. Yeah. So if you're right, if you have something about a supply curve, it's like, which of these does not shift the supply curve? You pick the one that's a price change. Yes. So you supply curve and not a shifter, but just the price of the good goes up or down. Like if the price goes down, then sellers want to sell less of it, but not for any reason, right? It's not like the resources got more expensive or the technology doesn't work as well or there's more taxes or whatever. No, it's the good price went down, so your seller's like, yeah, I'm not going to hustle. No, just law of supply, not a shifter. Hashtag no shifter, no shift. Cool. Okay, so I will circle back to Vincent's. Let's see what else. I think that Ashley had another. Deadweight loss. Yeah, so the deadweight loss is where it is because, well, yeah. So okay, so there seemed to be a little bit of confusion about this. Okay, so you have an equilibrium graph. Sorry, it's weird, but okay. So we only ever do anything with this part of the graph. Never anything here, here, or here, because these are the only overlaps between buyers and sellers. Okay, over here, the price is really low and the quantity is high, so your sellers are not interested at all over here. Over here, your price is high and your quantity is high and your buyers are not at all interested. Okay, so because there's no overlap between supply and demand in these areas, nothing happens here. Okay, so your deadweight loss, your producer and consumer surplus, always to the left of the equilibrium point. Faux show. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question, Ashley. Okay, Coase theorem is a market solution, but it requires the establishment of the property right. But remember, that's a good thing that governments definitely have to do for markets to function well. So you could go to take the other person to court. Court says, oh yeah, person A is in the wrong. And then person A and B can negotiate. And the person who cares the most compensates the other person and gets what they want. Why is there no deadweight loss in equilibrium? Because deadweight loss is lost producer and consumer surplus from trades that aren't happening, but would be if we were at equilibrium. And if we're at equilibrium, all the trades that should be happening, all the people who want to participate in this market at this price can find a buddy to trade with. So all of this is captured producer and consumer surplus. And then, yeah, where the producer and consumer surplus is, or like why, yeah, so your producer or consumer surplus is on top because your demand curve is all the people willing to pay a higher price, but they all get to pay the market price and they're super stoked. So all that difference is them being super stoked. And then the supply curve is these sellers willing to take a lower price than the equilibrium price, but they get to sell at a high price and they're stoked about that. These sellers will not participate in this market because the price is too low. The buyers will not participate because the price is too high. We don't care about these people yet. If the price were to change, they would think about it, but otherwise, no. Okay. All right, we thought about PPF. Okay, yeah, we can do PPF. I'll put that on the queue. All right, cool. Okay, so DMR, ATC. Yeah, okay, so, yeah, all right, so diminishing marginal returns. All right, so doing an example with numbers will probably help make it a little more concrete. So, let's see. So if, okay, so I guess using the ball game is probably the easiest thing. So the production possibilities frontier. Okay, but production possibilities curve, we can call it. Okay, But then so in the ball game, when there was just one worker, the worker produced, it was different in each class, but something like 10 tennis balls it was like 7 or 8 by him or herself. Okay, so let's say you have to pay the worker $10. Okay, so I'm gonna make a table where I have worker number or like quantity of worker. So workers and the number of tennis balls. Okay, and then if let's say the workers cost $10 each. Okay, so it costs $10 to get one of you guys to run the tennis balls. I know it would have been an expensive experiment. $0 was a great price, but in real life, you have to pay your workers. You don't have an army of students just ready and excited to run tennis balls across rooms. So you have to pay your workers $10 each, right? So with one worker, we produce, say, 7 tennis balls. Okay. All right. So what is the ATC? Well, okay, we'll do marginal cost. What's the marginal cost of a tennis ball? If with one worker, which you have to pay $10, you produce 7 tennis balls. At least think about how you'd solve it if you don't have your calculator handy. Also, my dog's going to bark in a second. There's someone outside. Sorry. Okay, so if the worker costs you $10 and produces 7 tennis balls, okay, then the cost per tennis ball. So cost per tennis ball. So we could call that marginal cost. In this case, it's a little bit of stretch. It's maybe more like ATC. But it would be the cost of the worker, $10, divided by the number of tennis balls produced, which is 7. So $10 divided by 7 is the marginal cost of that bunch of tennis balls. Okay, so marginal cost of a bunch of tennis balls is like $1 something. Okay, so $1 something. All right. So great. All right. So then we added the second worker, and for most of the groups, the number of tennis balls more than doubled. Right? Remember, your two working together were able to toss it, and they were a lot faster at moving the tennis balls. So for a lot of groups, the number of tennis balls was maybe 15. Okay, so total tennis balls 15. So the number of marginal tennis balls is 8. Okay, and so then it's $10 for the second worker divided by 8. Okay, and so that's $1 something, but it's less than it was before. Anybody got the numbers on that? It's 10 divided by 8. 1.2? No, 1.1 something? Oh, math is hard. Okay, but it's smaller than it was before because the marginal product of that worker is greater than it was before. Okay, so this is increasing marginal returns. Okay, and so that makes your marginal cost go down. Okay, so your marginal cost curve initially goes down. It initially goes down because at the beginning of your production process, you can get increasing marginal returns by doing a little bit of specialization, okay? A little division of labor. Okay, but then we added a third worker, and for a lot of your groups, your third worker didn't add a lot of extra tennis balls. So let's say that the total number of tennis balls went up to 19 by adding a third worker. Okay, so adding that third worker added 4 extra tennis balls. So you pay the worker $10 extra divided by the 4 extra tennis balls, but now, oh man, right? Now the cost per tennis ball is more than $2. Okay, it's like 2 something, right? Okay, so notice the cost per tennis ball went up because you're adding another unit of the variable resource and you have to pay it just the same as you did the previous unit, all things team. But it's giving you less extra production. Okay, and that's diminishing marginal returns. So because it's giving you less extra production, your third worker only produced 4 tennis balls extra, whereas your second one produced 8 tennis balls extra, and the first produced 7 tennis balls extra. Now your cost per tennis ball moved is getting higher. Okay, so that's why the marginal cost curve looks like a Nike swoosh or a check mark. Okay, so your marginal cost is the Nike swoop or check mark. Initially goes down. Because you could get increasing marginal returns, and so the cost per tennis ball goes down. But then you quickly get diminishing marginal returns, so the cost per tennis ball goes up, right? And so then we can keep going, right? So some of you guys on your fourth worker had a total number of tennis balls, say, of 21 total tennis balls with 4 workers. So the marginal contribution of the fourth worker is 2 tennis balls. So then you have to pay them $10 divided by, $10 is the wage of the worker, what you have to pay to have one more worker. I just made that up. And obviously, I did not pay you guys a fair living wage for your work. on the tennis ball production line. So sorry. But if this worker is now only producing 2 marginal tennis balls, but you have to pay them $10 because that's what you have to pay all your workers. Now it's $10 divided by 2. So now each tennis ball costs you $5 to produce. Okay, costs you $5 to produce. Okay. Anushka, you still don't feel confident. Is that about something else? About this? How many questions do you have? Common is 25 questions, 30 minutes. Native is 16 multiple choice and 3 or 4 free response, also 30 minutes. Okay, what are we doing? Sorry, I wasn't looking at the feed. Let's see. Does every action have diminishing marginal returns? Yeah, anything that's at all like a production process. Right, so we talked about all sorts of weird things, like if you're picking fruit from a tree, you pick the easy to get to branches first. And so in the first increment of effort, you can get a lot of fruit. But then the next increment of effort takes, that increment of effort gets you a little bit less extra fruit, because now you have to reach up a little more, walk a little further to get that next fruit. And then the next increment of effort gets you even less extra fruit, because now, again, you're like reaching up and it's harder to get because you picked all the easy ones. And then several increments in, you're like starting to have to climb the tree, and it takes a lot of effort and not getting a lot of fruit. So yes, anything that's at all like a production process, even like we talked about, like weird stuff, like getting peanut butter out of a peanut butter jar, right? Or toothpaste out of a toothpaste tube, right? When your toothpaste tube is brand new, you barely touch it and the toothpaste just squirts out. So it takes next to no effort to produce the toothpaste. But then by the end, you're like spending half an hour squishing the last little bit. Okay. So as the amount of effort that goes into getting extra toothpaste out, the effort increases as you go through the toothpaste tube. So you should always assume that diminishing marginal returns is going to happen. The cost is going to rise as you're doing more and more of the action, because you do the easy stuff first. Crowd variable inputs, you crowd fixed inputs by adding more and more variable inputs. Yeah, those are really the main ones. But yeah, diminishing marginal returns. I don't know if I emphasized in class, but it's only a short run phenomenon, right? So economies of scale is your long run phenomenon, but diminishing marginal returns is only a short run phenomenon. So like you're practicing your instrument, the first increment of time, you're pretty productive, you're getting stuff done, you're focused, right? And then as the increments of time and effort go on, you're getting less and less extra benefit from that time, because right, you're getting tired, you've already practiced the stuff that's important. But if you maybe go and take a nap, then you might be able to practice again and be refreshed, if that makes sense, right? Because right, and then definitely the next day you'll be able to play again just fine. So it's only a short run phenomenon. So you think about exercising. So like if you start lifting weights, right? Your first couple repetitions aren't too difficult because you're fresh, but then it starts to get really hard, and then your arms feel like rubber and it's super hard. Okay, but then if you start to feel really, really weak, and each extra repetition is really hard. But then over time, you build up strength, and so that's economies of scale. Okay, that as you're putting more and more effort into doing this thing, you get better and better at it. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Oh, sorry, I was not watching the video. I'm sorry. Marginal cost. Okay. How much they cost? Hyperinflation. Yeah, we're going to talk about hyperinflation soon, in a couple of weeks. Yeah, you don't need to know that obviously for the precomp, but what would the economies of scale be for weightlifting? I mean, your body gets to a point where you have so much muscle mass that you have to maybe eat tons of protein to sustain it, and you have to work out a lot to keep that muscle mass. So I would probably describe that as economies of scale. You're at a point where it's absurd to try to keep that much buff. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not swole. I don't really know that life, but okay, cool. Any other thoughts? There are no perfectly inelastic goods. Yeah, no perfectly inelastic goods. Yeah, people don't have unlimited money, and there are always substitutes. So there could be a good that has pretty darn inelastic demand, right? Like an emergency blood transfusion, right? Although that one's kind of skewed because usually it's covered by insurance, or at least part of it is. And so people are like, oh, I don't really care what it is because my insurance company is going to pay for it. So of course, if other people are paying, the demand's going to be more inelastic. But even if you knew that you'd have to pay for it, you're like, you know what? If I'm dead, my money does me no good. I'd be willing to pay everything I have for this emergency blood transfusion that I need. So that's a pretty close to inelastic. But again, people don't have unlimited money, right? But yeah, the demand would be really inelastic for that. Can economies of scale ever be short run? No, they're a long run phenomenon. But the time period depends on. Okay, so remember, the short run is the time period in which some things can't be changed, and the long run is the time period in which anything can be changed. And so it might be that your production process is easy enough to adapt and your resources are not that fixed, such that your time period is pretty short. So your short run might even be like a really small time frame, in which case you can get economies of scale quickly, but it's still a long run because it's not about the amount of time, it's about how much adjustment you can do over time. Okay. Hyperinflation. Milton Friedman thinks hyperinflation is only and ever a monetary phenomenon, increase in the money supply. There's a new economic theory that disagrees with that, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Oh yeah, I see you, Jalen. Thank you. Yeah, printing money is really the main culprit for hyperinflation. You can get a little inflation on the margin with an increase in demand or a decrease in supply of all goods. And so we'll talk about that. We're going to put all of our supply curves together and all of our demand curves together and talk about that. But yeah, that's the only idea of hyperinflation. Really is lots of money printing. Boop, boop, boop. Fixed and variable in the short run. Boop, boop, boop. Okay. Fixed cost only short run. Yeah. Okay. Okay, and then yeah, so Jalen wants to know invisible hand and known words. Yeah, so invisible hand is Adam Smith's description of market coordination, and so the idea is each person pursuing their self-interest leads them to serve others, because again, that's the way you get ahead in a market society is you make things that other people value, you do things that other people are willing to pay you for, but the convenient outcome is that you, even if you're really selfish and you just want as much money and power and influence as possible, you can only get that by serving other people and giving them what they want. So that's, people are led as if by an invisible hand to an end which was no part of their intention, right? So you might not care about other people or about making the world a better place, but simply by going to work every day and working hard and doing a good job, you're making the world a better place. So pretty cool. Okay, how long is this stream? I don't know, till you guys get off. Okay. Okay, there were a couple other thoughts people had. Market barriers versus legal barriers. Market barriers to entry are logistical mostly, like startup costs, big capital, economies of scale, advertising, whereas legal barriers are all laws. Variable cost is in both. Yeah, variable cost is in fixed cost only short run. Yeah, answers the pre-comp, so you get 100%. No, because then it won't be sad anymore, and I love being sad. That's important. Okay. No, you guys are gonna be so great. Don't worry at all. But Vincent had, what was Vincent's? Sorry, I didn't get to all of yours, Ashley. What is economic profit show? Okay. Every country is a mixed economy because there's always some interventions. Okay. Vincent. Oh yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we covered Vincent's. Good. Awesome. Okay. And then economic profit shows opportunity costs also. Yeah. Yeah. So accounting profit doesn't include opportunity costs as part of the cost. That is, you're not paying the entrepreneur. You're not compensating the entrepreneur for their efforts. So yeah, if you see profit, you should assume it includes opportunity costs unless it says accounting profit. But yeah, counting opportunity costs is important. Okay, yeah, you guys are gonna be so great. Can you most missed test questions? Yeah, yeah. I don't have any tests on me here. Yeah, most commonly missed. I don't know. From what I've seen from people doing or like in tutoring and stuff, there seems to be some struggles with calculating marginals and then using like the utility maximizing rule and stuff. So let's do that like a Nick Any Big problem. So let me give you a table of quantities and total cost and total utility, and have you guys optimize it for me. Okay, so let's do quantity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, total cost. Okay, so 210, 340, 550, no, 500, we'll do that, okay. And then 700. Okay, and then let's have the total utility be 200, 360, 480, 580, and 700. No, that won't work. Never mind. Sorry. 80 and 660. Okay, yeah, let's do that. Okay, so go ahead and tell me how many units of the good this person should buy. I mean, we're going to start macro next week. So we're going to get into all that mess. But I appreciate your enthusiasm. Macro is super interesting. Yeah, you do need to calculate. In this case, it's not MR, it's MU, marginal utility. But yeah, you definitely need marginal utility and marginal cost. Because remember the rule, right?